Hi everyone. Thursday, 10 o'clock. Just going to take you through another instalment of Assessment 5 Startup. This is where we're going to break down the question. So I might just start the show, the PowerPoint show that is, and begin, and I promise, no, I won't promise, I might use my red pen. Okay. Alrighty, so I need to play from the start. Here we go. So lots of questions coming through. You'll know that there is the starter pack. If you go to Assessment 5 Journal Resources, open that folder. It's on the Interact site. Inside that folder is another folder called Assessment 5 Starter Pack, and I'm putting in a series of things, helpful resources. If you're watching this one, I've assumed that you've done the other installments of the starter pack. So what we're going to do now is just break down the question. So it is a significant assessment in that it's worth 30%. Okay, so keep in mind on that. We are going to stick to the due date of the 29th of May. And I've spoken about this before, dates are important. Having deadlines is important for many people. Of course, we do understand we're in a real world. We will be able to provide extensions. You need to email me or one of the other staff to request an extension, okay? But I'm not moving the due date, but you can apply for an extension if you think you need. So let's have a crack. So let's break this down. I know when you first look at the question, it's a new area for you. I think I said at the very start of the semester, many of you have excelled at school in languages and the arts, and science hasn't been at the front of your mind, and it is a different way of thinking and writing, and the question might seem a little bit hard to get your head around. So let's get into it. Okay, so the assessment, this is the actual task. It requires you to develop and participate in a small research project. And I have asked you to participate in citizen science, and I'll come back to that, okay? But essentially what we're doing when we do research is very broad, okay? And it breaks down into two main sections. There's qualitative research, and that's where we do surveys and interviews and that kind of thing and deal with words, more or less. And there's quantitative research where we deal with numbers, yeah, with statistics. And there's mixed methods where we use both. So don't be too concerned if you have not participated in a citizen science project. Because our research, we're actually doing a discipline of research called desk research, and it's a legitimate form of study, and I do a lot of my research is in desk research. And desk research really means we use the data of other people, yeah, right? We look at what other people have written, yep. We find common links and we make a discussion out of the data that exists, and then we write about it, okay? So it's very important to remember we're doing some desk research. It's a particular methodology. Now, as I said, there are two main areas of research, quantitative and qualitative, and those methodologies can be broken down from those two areas. So we are doing desk research. Now, I'm going to provide some material for you to go in the methodology section of your report, right? So we'll have some uniform components that we all share, because methodology is repeatable, so that's okay. So don't panic too much about that, but know that we're doing desk research. So I did ask you to participate in some citizen science, and that was for experience in being part of a process in collecting data and understanding what goes on. And I did refer you to the Australian Citizen Science Association to find projects, and I know that many of you have done that and you've enjoyed participating in some way, and I hope that can continue. Now we're going to do some further analysis of that. Now, the majority of citizen science projects feed into a bigger database. And in Australia, that bigger database is the Atlas of Living Australia. Now, I have mentioned that a little earlier in other starter packs, and I'll do some specific starter packs about that as well. So don't freak out if you haven't got any data that you've submitted yourself. I did want you to participate where possible, but we're going to do some analysis of data now. We're going to do some desk research on that data. And like I said, the majority of citizen science projects do feed into the ALA. Okay, so you might, from your citizen science project, you might be able to get some information. But as I said, this is our main source, okay? This is the page from ALA, and now I'll do something specific about ALA. So we've got our citizen science project, and you can get information from them perhaps, but it does vary a little bit. The ALA is key to this. Yes, I'll do a specific starter segment on ALA. I've already spoken about Scholar quite a few times, and I expect you to be using it now. And I expect you have personalized it, the Google Scholar page, so it includes CSU library. So when you log into CSU library, or when you log into Google Scholar, your search items will come up if they're at CSU. And of course, CSU Primo. So, you know, these are the big things you need to do the desk study. We need access to ALA, number one, right? That's pretty important. Number two, we need Google Scholar. That's quite critical to all of this, yeah? Okay, you've got your citizen science stuff. Remember, that's important. You may have collected some data yourself. You may have put it into a citizen science project, and that's great. And that ultimately would feed into the ALA, yeah? So everything you need is here. Yes, this is a desk study, so desk research, so we can do it from our desk, literally, all right? So, be sure you're familiar with these things. Okay. So what are you actually getting asked to do? Well, you've identified a species, and we want to see how that species is going to respond to climate change. Yeah? We're interested in how useful citizen science data is, and we want to compare citizen science data, so that's ALA data, yeah, that's Google Scholar data. We want to compare data, right? So we want to look at, we probably want to look at between 1 and 5, between 2 and 5 articles about your species and climate change. Okay, now I'm going to put some more detail around this in a moment. So, essentially, what is the impact of climate change on your species? How useful is citizen science programs? We talk about the distributional and phenological data. So just to distribution, it's pretty straightforward. Where's your species found? And phenological has to do with, you know, the day-to-day sort of changes and seasons and that sort of thing, yeah? So what happens in Australia with summers getting hotter, for example, that'll impact on the phenological data, okay? So think distribution, that's pretty straightforward, and think of the changes your species goes through over a season or day to day. I might have told you earlier, I was doing helping out on a research project looking at ringtail possums, and we were really, their phenological data was that they're nocturnal, okay? So how do they behave during the day when they're resting was the focus of our study. Okay, so if we come back a bit, peer-reviewed journals. So again, where do we go? We go Google Scholar, right? You've got to be using Google Scholar. And that data this is where EndNote's really useful too, because I've put up some starter packs where you can set up a folder and download an article, put it in this particular folder that you set up with EndNote, and that citation information will go directly across into EndNote. So that makes things really, really easy. It also keeps your PDF, which is fantastic. So I'll do more on this, but you need to be aware of Atlas of Living Australia. I'll do some specific starter packs about that as well. Okay, so the impact of climate change. We've got people looking at a wide range of species, which is fantastic. We're going to have a really nice selection of reports. It's okay to help each other out and to share the resources. It's not so cool to share the writing and your interpretation and your discussion, but you can certainly swap articles among yourselves and titles among yourselves. That's really good. We've got marine animals being looked at, leafy sea dragons. I've actually was fortunate to grow up on the coast where there was a colony of leafy sea dragons, and as a young teenager, I participated in identifying some sites and helping some researchers find some colonies around Eden in Twofold Bay, which was really exciting. We've got lots of people looking at mammals. We've got some people looking at plants, which is really fantastic. Someone looking at lichens, which is really, really cool. And of course, we've got lots of iconic birds. I just put this up. These are obviously photos that I've got from using the online search in PowerPoint. And the good thing about this is the PowerPoint brings an acknowledgement, yeah? And this is CC, so these are in Creative Commons. But I would expect that your report does contain photos, okay? And if you do have photos and images, they should have a citation, right? So this is what they'll look like. So please look at your report, and it needs to look pleasing to the eye, and you can use photos and captions about your species, okay? So climate change is the other component in this. And there is a module for you to complete on climate change and understanding climate change. And of course, over the majority of you who are in your late teens, early 20s, have experienced significant climate change. You've lived through climate change. I think it's 17 of the hottest summers on record in Australia have happened over the last 20 years. You know, we're experiencing extremes in climate change. So you need to become somewhat of an expert on climate change, and we've given you that module to start with. And of course, there is the Academy of Science material. So these, you can include graphs like this, as well as images of your species. Okay, this is just some graphs about modelling in Australia and changes in temperature and species. So this one's about species richness. Okay, and you can see the solid colours. This is what Australia used to be. This is what Australia is, and this is what Australia potentially will be as far as species richness is concerned. So use images that make sense and help you explain your story, your journal article. Right. We've lived through this, as I've said, and again, you can use photos to enhance your understanding. We're leading towards studying the Anthropocene, which is an understanding of how human activity has caused climate change. And when we talk about climate change, less rainfall, and Australia has experienced significant droughts. We move far away from the notion that droughts happen all the time. It's the regularity of droughts is a concern. And while it's not raining, Australia is also experiencing higher levels of humidity, and that affects things. We've got sea levels rising, we've got major weather events occurring. Of course, we lived through the horrors of this January with its bushfires. Okay, so while some of this might not directly affect your species, okay, it affects your species environment, it it might affect your species, well, in this case, for turtles, nesting sites. It might impact on your species food source, okay? So you've got to look broadly at how climate change is affecting your species, all right? Let's get to the word count. I'm going to stick, it's 2,000 to 2,500 words is the range. So if we go with the top range, okay, usually you have 10% either side, all right? So if we go 10% either side, it's 250 words. And if we look at the bottom range of 750, of 1,200, we get to this 1,750, okay? So aim for around 1,750. It's tough, I know it's a big write, but I'll show you how to break it down in a moment. So if it helps not to think about 2,500 words, if it helps to think about 1,750, please do that. That's sort of our minimum requirement, okay? And I've just lost connection with my mouse, and hopefully it's going to come back in a moment. There it is, okay. Right, so let's just look at what happens. So we've got our components, and you know you have your template, and I'll put in descriptions about each template, the type of information that's included. Let's just go through this. The abstract, you actually do the abstract last, right? It's an overall, like an executive summary. It really tells the reader the key components of what you're going to do, and I suggest you write this last. The introduction, well, that just tells us what it's about. You know, what is your species and your impacts on climate change, and something that's going to entice the reader to look on. And you're going to talk about your participating in citizen science, and there's got to be a bit of an overview and something to entice the reader to move on, and some indication of the value of your study. The methodology we'll help you with, all right, but it is primarily desk research. If you want to look up some material on desk research, you're welcome to, but we will provide some. You're going to talk about your experience with citizen science, and we're primarily going to draw data from the ALA, yeah, and of course, peer-reviewed journal articles. So in the results, okay, in the results section, so you've read all about your species and climate change, okay? So you're going to talk to, in your results, you're going to say, well, this is the situation in Australia with climate change, yeah? You're going to profile your species, yeah? And you're going to talk about 2 to 5 research projects that you've got from Google Scholar and supported with information from the ALA, yeah, that explore the impact of climate change on your species. Climate change, your species, yeah? Okay. Right, into the discussion, well, what did you learn? Basically, what's the future of your species? What will be the effects of climate change on the environment, the food source, the breeding requirements? What has been the impacts on your species? Yeah, the conclusion is similar to the introduction, but sort of wraps everything up. Often when I read a research article, I'll read the abstract, which is important, which is the big, you know, a really good synopsis of the study in just a few words. But I think the conclusion has all the guts to it. So this is your discussion. These are all the things that are impacting. All right, so what's going to happen? What will happen to your species? You know, you do a bit, what does the data tell us we have to do for this species? Do we wipe our hands clean of it? Do we have to have major conservation campaigns? What do we do? And the reference list. The reference list needs to be quite extensive. All right, you're only going to refer to, your desk research is going to look at 2 to 5 research projects, okay? But you're going to have to understand climate change, aspects of your species, a whole range of things. So we expect that you've done quite a bit of research on this. We expect it to be all in APA. We're giving you enough information about EndNote, so we want all that technical stuff correct. All right, okay, so that's, and of course, Of course, the journal articles, if you get a distinction or greater, you'll be invited to have your work published in our yearbook, our Science 102 yearbook. If you get between a credit and a pass, you can say, well, I'd like to be in it. And you might have to do a little bit of editing, and you're welcome to be in it. Yeah, I think it's a really nice thing to finish. So this is a challenging task. But if you don't, if a task doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. Why are we doing this? This is about understanding how science works, and it's proving our ability to participate in science at an appropriate level. And a desk research project is really a really good place to start, because we can look at the research people have done, we can gain some insights into their research, and we can do some synopsis of that research. Okay, so it is a challenging task. So get to it. Yeah. Which one of these photos is you, perhaps? Any of that look familiar? I certainly know that I wish that was my desk. I've got elements, all the elements of what's on that desk are in my desk somewhere, but I don't know if it's like that all the time. But anyway, get cracking. There's lots to do. I hope this is a useful breakdown of what you've got to do. You can watch the recording again if you need to. So I'll just end that. I'll discard the annotations, and we will hopefully stop the recording and